Je déclare ouverte la deuxième séance plénière.
The second plenary meeting of the high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution is called to order. The conference shall now continue its general debate. As announced in our letter dated 9th June, and in accordance with the modalities of the conference contained in GA Resolution 79/81, as well as indicated yesterday, statements delivered in the general debate should not exceed 5 minutes. Speakers with longer statements are encouraged to read an abridged version of their text and then to submit the full length of their statement to estatements@un.org to be posted on the Journal of the United Nations. I now give the floor to His Excellency Ronald Ozzy Lamola, Minister for International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa.
Co-chairs, South Africa welcomes this crucial discussion on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. This conference takes place at a time when we are witnessing the destruction of Gaza, its people, and in real time. In a brazen and wanton act of genocide in full view of the world, South Africa continues to condemn the horrific events of October 7th, where innocent Israeli citizens were killed. Despite this challenging context, in which the international legal and multilateral system has been paralyzed and turned into a blunt tool, the focus today on a real path to lasting peace must prevail. The might is right doctrine can no longer be justified. It has led to perpetual insecurity, and it justifies an attempt to eradicate the Palestinian people through killing and starvation. Co-chairs, South Africa hopes that this conference will plot a real path forward, based on concrete actions for the creation of a Palestinian state existing peaceful and side by side with the state of Israel, along the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Resolution 181, adopted by the General Assembly in 1947, provided for the creation of two states, at a time when South Africa and many other developing countries were under the yoke of colonialism. Many of us have attained our freedom and independence. However, the inalienable right to self-determination of the Palestinian people, guaranteed under international law, has remained elusive for close to 8 years. In the week preceding this conference, a concerning message was sent when the Israel Knesset adopted a motion calling for applying Israel's sovereignty over the occupied West Bank and the Jordan Valley, signaling the intention of Israel to annex this territory. This could effectively bury the two-state solution and continue with the blatant violation of international law, including UN resolutions and the ICJ rulings, which have given hope to the people of Palestine. Their hopes must not be in vain. Peace must prevail. Co-chairs, South Africa is anti-war and prefers dialogue over violence. South Africa would like to stress the following points as fundamental to restoring the credibility of the two-state solution. Firstly, all states must urgently recognize Palestine's statehood, and the territorial integrity and contiguity of Palestine should be established and respected. In this regard, South Africa welcomes the intention of the recognition of the state of Palestine by France as an important step towards achieving a two-state solution. Secondly, there cannot be peace while the very existence of the Palestinian people is being threatened by Israel's continued genocidal actions in Gaza and the forced displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank. This is part of a systematic pattern of injustice and oppression of Palestinians since the adoption of Resolution 181 and the subsequent Nakba in 1948. These actions must be condemned, and the UN Security Council must act to protect the Palestinian people in whole and in part. Thirdly, Preserving the viability of the two-state solution must include promoting safeguards, such as the full respect for international law, including international humanitarian law and human rights law. It is necessary for the immediate and full implementation of resolutions of the United Nations and the provisional measures, as well as advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice, to be respected and to be implemented. Not only Israel, but all states must comply with our collective obligations under international law. We all have a duty to preserve the sanctity of international law and ensure accountability. It is against this backdrop that we have seen the establishment of the Hague Group and the recent meeting of the Madrid Group to elevate the primacy of international law, promote accountability, and ensure a just peace. Finally, all obstacles to two-state solutions should be removed. These include an immediate ceasefire and a commitment to peace process, the release of all hostages by Hamas and political prisoners by the State of Israel, the halting of illegal Israel settlement expansion, the removal of the illegal separation wall cutting across the occupied Palestinian territory, and the resumption of all international reputable human rights relief efforts and the reconstruction of Gaza, which of course can only take place once there is peace. Co-chairs, global attention is on this conference. There is an expectation that we will deliver an effective response to the destruction of an entire population and a peaceful path for preserving the prospect of a viable Palestinian state, existing side by side with the State of Israel in peace and security. This expectation should not be misplaced and could not be higher. 8 years since the founding of the United Nations, this is a matter that has plagued our collective conscience. The solution lies with the tangible recommitment from all of us to the values that must bind us. Peace must reverberate in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, and in the whole of the Palestinian territory. And this is in our hands. I thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the Minister for International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa. I now give the floor to His Excellency Paulo Rangel, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Portugal.
Son Excellence, ministre des Affaires étrangères.
Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs of France.
Prince Faisal, Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Before any other statement or remark, let me be loud and clear. The war must end. The humanitarian crisis and starvation must end. This cycle of violence and destruction must stop. This cycle of violence, initiated with the barbaric attacks of October 7th and the capture of hostages, has led to the killing of thousands of civilians, women and children, and to the brutal destruction of almost all of Gaza's basic infrastructure. We face one of the most horrific sequences of violence between Palestinians and Israelis in their long and difficult history. Portugal understands the suffering of Israeli people. Portugal understands the suffering of Palestinian people. Peace and stability in the Middle East will remain elusive as long as Palestinians are denied their fundamental right to a viable sovereign state and Israel is threatened. For that to happen, the war in Gaza must come to an immediate end, and the massive delivery of humanitarian aid must resume immediately. There is no justification for starvation and for the inhumane killing of civilians, including children, seeking to meet their most basic needs. Freedom of movement of Palestinians in and throughout Gaza must be wholly restored, and the forced displacement of the Palestinian population is simply unacceptable. The destruction of Palestinian homes and properties in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, must come to a full halt. Likewise, settlement building in occupied land has to end, and settler violence against Palestinians has to be stopped. All hostages in Gaza must be released immediately and without any condition. The horror of the October the 7th attacks cannot be forgotten. Terrorism can never be justified. Excellencies, we thank the co-organizers, Saudi Arabia and France, for this very timely high-level ministerial meeting. Portugal reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the two-state solution. We have for the last 50 years consistently voted in favor of all resolutions pertaining to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We maintain our political and our financial support to UNRWA. We reiterate our full support for the Palestinian Authority, for its empowerment and its capacitation. Only the Palestinian Authority grants the effective implementation of the two-state solution. We repudiate any decision that entails or envisages the annexation or occupation of the West Bank or Gaza Strip, either it is full or partial. We welcome the Arab Recovery and Reconstruction Plan presented at the Cairo Summit. We welcome the willingness of so many Arab countries to recognize Israel and to normalize relations with Israel upon the condition of the acceptance of two-state solution. We welcome the effective and unprecedented commitment by the Palestinian Authority to some essential conditions that are key to enable the two-state solution and to the recognition of Palestine. First, condemnation of terrorist acts by Hamas and call for its complete disarmament. Second, call for the unconditional and immediate release of hostages and prisoners. Third, commitment to internal institutional reform and to the organization of elections in the near future. Fourth, acceptance of the principle of a demilitarized Palestinian state. 5, readiness to resume the full administration and control of Gaza Strip. And 6th, recognition of the State of Israel and its security needs. These commitments of the Palestinian Authority are truly meaningful. Actually, these commitments substantiate a new step towards the implementation of the two-state solution. There is no doubt that this declaration of the Palestinian Authority, combined with the new position of so many states of the region towards Israel and its right to existence, in the very context of this conference, marks a turning point. Excellencies, an old Palestinian proverb says, kinship is kinship, but humanity is closer. Indeed, may the lessons of such a long suffering in the Middle East finally inspire a renewed collective sense of humanity and belief in peace, so that, as written in the Pirkei Avot, the world can stand on 3 things: justice, truth, and peace. Palestinian wisdom tells us that humanity is closer than kinship. Israeli wisdom reminds us justice, truth, and peace are the pillars of the world. Only a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel in peace, security, and prosperity can bring justice, truth, and peace to humanity. The war must end. Death, captivity, illness, and suffering must stop.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Portugal. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Rosa Yolanda Villavicencio, Acting Minister for Foreign Affairs of Colombia.
Buenos días.
Good morning, distinguished co-chairs, distinguished delegates, excellencies. While we are meeting here, hundreds of people are dying in Gaza. The world is watching with horror as a campaign of ethnic cleansing is rolled out against children, women, older persons, the sick and wounded, a campaign that is violating the most basic norms of international law. July was the most deadly month for the population of Gaza in the past 18 months. According to reliable information, on average, more than 100 Palestinians were killed by Israel each day this month. 10,000 more people have been injured. The figures show that despite international pressure, Israel has increased its violence. We are seeing indicators similar to those from February 2024. Enough is enough. The Gaza Strip is cut off from communications. There is no food nor drinking water, no medical care. Children are not going to school. Vaccination has been paralyzed, and the entry of humanitarian assistance has been blocked. Hunger has been added to Israel's arsenal of war, and now the population of Gaza is also dying of starvation. Enough is enough. And in the West Bank, settler violence, endorsed and encouraged by the occupying power, is imposing a regime of terror that openly defies international law. Enough is enough. We call for an immediate, permanent, and unconditional ceasefire and the end of the illegal occupation. We cannot remain indifferent in the face of the normalization of the systematic violation of the most basic norms of human coexistence. Enough is enough. With the disdain with which it has been addressing its international obligations, Israel is intending to destroy several decades of human progress, as reflected in the rules-based system that gave rise to the United Nations. The world cannot go back to tolerating the use of hunger as a method of war or apartheid as a system of segregation and exploitation. Enough is enough. Colombia reaffirms its historic support for a peaceful, just, definitive, and comprehensive political solution to the question of Palestine, one that is based on the solution of two states living side by side in peace and security within secure and internationally recognized pre-1967 borders, and recognizing the inalienable right to return of Palestinian refugees. But when we speak of the two-state solution, we have to be clear. This cannot be a cosmetic fix that legitimizes the occupation. The Palestinian state must be a viable sovereign political entity, and it must have the same conditions as any of the countries participating in this conference. It must possess its own government, the ability to defend itself and to protect its population, total jurisdiction over its territory and its airspace, control of its borders, and the chance to administer its natural resources. We cannot tolerate conditions being attached to the full exercise of the right to self-determination of the Palestinians. The Palestinian state has declared itself to be peace-loving, and therefore it should be admitted as a full member of this organization without further delay. In the meantime, it is the obligation of all states to take measures to counter this humanitarian catastrophe. Now is not the time for more speeches. Enough is enough. Colombia has shown that it believes in facts and not in words. We broke off diplomatic relations with the genocidal government in Tel Aviv, and we decided to stop selling it our coal. We are participating as an interested third party in the genocide case brought by South Africa at the International Court of Justice. And we've contributed to the proceedings on Israeli leaders currently underway at the International Criminal Court. Together with South Africa, we created the Hague Group, which is a platform for action and the pursuit of justice. We urge all countries to join these initiatives and to adopt similar measures. We hope that this conference will serve to galvanize the necessary international support that will allow for a definitive political solution to the question of Palestine, one that is based on the right of both states to self-determination and to live in peace. Thank you. I thank the Acting Minister for Foreign Affairs of Colombia. I give the floor to His Excellency Luca Beccari, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Political Affairs, International Economic Cooperation and Digital Transition of San Marino.
Co-Chair, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, on behalf of the Government of the Republic of San Marino, I would like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the French Republic for co-chairing this high-level conference at a time when the need for moral clarity and political courage has never been greater. San Marino condemned unequivocally the attack of the 7th October, which caused tragic loss of innocent life. At the same time, we cannot remain silent in the face of a disproportionate military response that has followed, marked by widespread destruction, civilian suffering, and severe humanitarian consequences, including the lack of access of food, clean water, and essential supply, raising the alarming risk of famine. This constitutes a grave violation of international law and international humanitarian law. It is incumbent on both parties to strictly respect these fundamental norms, protect civilians, and preserve the possibility of a just and lasting peace. We come together not only as representatives of our government, but as human beings. The Secretary General of the United Nations recently spoke of a collective moral failure in the face of the catastrophe unfolding in Gaza. This word must resonate with us. More than 50,000 lives lost, including thousands of children. A society torn apart. A people deprived of dignity, security, and hope. The tragic death of UN and UNRWA staff members, humanitarian workers, and journalists must not be tolerated. This is not only a political crisis. It is a test of our shared humanity. San Marino stands unequivocally for an immediate and lasting ceasefire, for unconditional release of hostages, for the protection of civilians, and for the full humanitarian access in accordance with international humanitarian law. At the same time, we are deeply concerned by the continued expansion of illegal settlement violence against civilians and other unilateral action in the West Bank, which threaten the viability of a future Palestinian state and undermine the prospect for peace. The unity and territorial continuity between the West Bank and Gaza under the Palestinian Authority are essential and any meaningful two-state solution. However, we must look beyond the immediate emergency. It is time to reignite the political horizon. San Marino reaffirmed is unwavering support for a two-state solution as a sovereign, independent, and viable state of Palestine, living in peace and mutual recognition alongside the State of Israel, both within secure internationally recognized border and with Jerusalem as a shared capital. We believe that peace is not only possible, but necessary and achievable if the international community acts with unity and resolve. In this spirit, we support a multilateral framework led by the United Nations, building on the Madrid terms of reference, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the Peace Day effort, underpinned by strong international guarantees and credible security arrangements for all. Co-Chair, on 15 May 2025, the Parliament of San Marino adopted unanimously an historical recommendation committing the government of the Republic to recognize the State of Palestine by the end of this year. This is not a symbolic act. It is an outcome of deep reflection and a principled stance grounded in the values that define our Republic: the rejection of war, the right of people to self-determination, and the primacy of international law. The recognition process has already begun. The Ambassador of Palestine has formally presented her letter of credence to the Captain Regent, our head of state. The next step will be the appointment of a San Marino ambassador accredited to Palestine, establishing full diplomatic relations. We will also continue to support Palestine's full membership in the United Nations, as well as to affirm the need of international organization presence to deliver full and safe humanitarian assistance, especially for children, women, and the most vulnerable. San Marino urges all nations to take coordinated and courageous steps. We cannot allow violence, despair, and extremism to shape the future. We must act now to build a peace grounded in dignity, accountability, and mutual recognition. Co-chairs, San Marino believe that the value of the just peace and human dignity know no border. We stand ready to accompany this irreversible process, ensuring full respect for international law, compliance by all, and sustained engagement through credible multilateral mechanisms. Let this conference be remembered not as a missed opportunity, but as a turning point. Let us replace cynicism with determination and silence with action, by implementing the two-state solution and by defining a common framework for the recognition of the State of Palestine, with clear, shared milestones that can encourage all nations to take meaningful steps forward. Thank you.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Political Affairs, International Economic Cooperation and Digital Transition of San Marino. I give the floor to His Excellency Abdullah Ali Al Yahya, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Kuwait.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, Your Highness Prince Farhan Al Saud, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Minister Baron, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the French Republic, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may the peace of God be upon you. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and to the French Republic for convening this important conference. I would also like to thank the Presidency of the General Assembly and His Excellency the Secretary General for their great efforts to guarantee the organization and preparation of this conference. We meet today while exceptional and tragic circumstances continue to unfold in the Palestinian territory, especially the Gaza Strip. Gaza is being subjected to unprecedented Israeli military aggression, which has claimed dozens of thousands of martyrs, most of whom are women and children, and extensive destruction of infrastructures, hospitals, schools, water and electricity facilities, and even shelters. The oppressive blockade on Gaza and the denial of food, medicine, electricity, and water have led to a humanitarian catastrophe that threatens the lives of more than 2 million people, most of whom are innocent civilians. This has exceeded a catastrophe and has become a challenge to the human conscience. The continued military aggression and the disregard for humanitarian and legal principles represents an inability of the international community to perform its duties, and it encourages impunity. Therefore, there is an urgent need for immediate and effective international action. And based on the state of Kuwait's historical and firm principles, we would like to reiterate the following positions. First, full recognition of the state of Palestine within the borders of June 4th, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital. In this context, we welcome the recent steps by several states to recognize the state of Palestine, and we call on the states who have not yet done so to do so as a basis for justice and peace. Second, immediate and comprehensive halt of the Israeli aggression against Gaza and all the occupied Palestinian territory, and to end the targeting of civilians and infrastructure, and to guarantee the non-recurrence of such crimes. Third, the permanent and unconditional opening of all crossings to guarantee the flow of humanitarian and medical aid, and enabling relief operations to reach the persons in need without difficulty. Fourth, we reject all forms of forced displacement aimed at changing the demographic reality in the Palestinian territory, and we affirm the right of Palestinian refugees to return home in accordance with UN Resolution 194. Fifth, supporting the Palestinian government and its institutions and expanding its authority over the entire Palestinian territory as a fundamental step in building an independent Palestinian state. Sixth, ensuring the protection of civilians, ending the violations, holding perpetrators accountable before the ICJ, and enabling the international justice mechanisms to guarantee the lack of impunity. Seventh, supporting all political and diplomatic efforts to revive the peace process in accordance with UN resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, and rejecting all policies that delay the two-state solution. Ladies and gentlemen, the state of Kuwait believes that a just and comprehensive peace cannot be achieved without ending the Israeli occupation and enabling the Palestinian people of gaining their legitimate rights. The time has come for the international community to end the recurring tragedy and to act to protect the innocent, to stop the aggression, and to end the siege and force the Israeli occupation to respect international humanitarian law. We are witnessing a tragic humanitarian situation that no living conscience can accept. Innocent people are killed at the gates of hospitals, and Gaza is being deprived of water, food, and medicine. Will there be a savior? Will there be a supporter for the people of Gaza? May the peace of God be upon you.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Kuwait. I give the floor now to His Excellency Mr. Tawhid Hussain, Advisor for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Interim Government of Bangladesh.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. At the outset, I thank the co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, for convening this high-level conference at the time when unity and urgency are more important than ever in advancing the discourse on peace and justice in Palestine. In this respect, I also commend the unwavering commitment and diligence of the 8 working group members. Excellencies, Bangladesh approaches this conference with moral clarity and a solemn sense of responsibility. Our Constitution commits us to stand with those who face oppression and affirms the right of people to self-determination. From our liberation war in 71 to the recent mass uprising in July and August last year, the people of Bangladesh always pursued the right to self-determination. That legacy shapes our empathy and enduring solidarity with the Palestinian people in their legitimate aspirations for an independent, sovereign state. Co-chairs, we reaffirm our steadfast support for the establishment of a viable and independent state of Palestine, based on pre-1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. We believe peace in the Middle East cannot be achieved without justice for Palestine, and justice cannot be delivered without implementing the two-state solution, the only viable and internationally recognized path forward, based on international law, relevant UN resolutions, and the aspirations of the people of Palestine. We strongly endorse the initiative of the Global Alliance for the implementation of the two-state solution. The consensus must now be translated into concrete, time-bound action. Excellencies, to turn this vision into reality, we must urgently address two core challenges. First, the conditions on the ground. A just and meaningful two-state solution requires a clear and contiguous Palestine territory. Today, that possibility is being disrupted through the expansion of illegal settlements in West Bank and the systematic erosion of Palestinian presence in East Jerusalem. Bangladesh calls for full compliance with international law in line with the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice issued on 19 July 2024, ending Israel's unlawful presence in the occupied Palestinian territory. Second, flagrant violation of international humanitarian law unfolding since October 2023, which is unprecedented in scale and gravity. More than 58,000 Palestinians have lost their lives and many more have been injured, most of them women and children. Schools, hospitals, and aid camps are under attack by IDF, with countless bodies lying beneath rubble in Gaza. We are undoubtedly witnessing one of the gravest genocides of our time. Bangladesh condemns this genocidal killing in Gaza and calls for accountability of the perpetrators. Use of starvation as a weapon by Israel is absolutely not acceptable. Co-chairs, words alone will not heal the sufferings of the Palestinian people. Our actions must be visible. From this conference, we simply cannot go back to where we were. Our topmost priority should be executing an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, and to ensure the urgent, sufficient, and unhindered delivery of essential supplies and services throughout the Gaza Strip. UNRWA should be strengthened, and any attempt to hinder its operations should be resisted. Civilians, aid workers, and medical personnel must be allowed immediate, safe access. We also need to mobilize new resources and funding to address the humanitarian crisis and to implement an effective and sustainable reconstruction of Gaza. We stand ready to join any UN-led efforts for rebuilding Gaza by deploying personnel to support humanitarian and future reconstruction plan. Co-chairs, we reiterate our call for the full recognition and membership of the State of Palestine in the United Nations. The implementation of the two-state solution must begin now. We must act with urgency and courage to uphold international law, international humanitarian law, and the UN Charter. Let us reaffirm our collective commitment and take our position to the right side of history. Thank you all.
Je remercie le
I thank the advisor for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Interim Government of Bangladesh. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ima Torfaus, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Andorra.
Monsieur le Président,
Co-chairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to welcome the convening of this high-level conference at a time when, following almost 2 years of war in Gaza, the suffering of civil society is at fever pitch. At a time when the world is deeply upset by the humanitarian situation in the region, we, representatives of United Nations member states, have a moral and a political duty to establish the conditions for lasting peace in the Middle East, a region which is undergoing this ordeal for decades now. The time has come to settle the question of Palestine. The settlement, in our view, can only occur through the implementation of the two-state solution. Andorra fully supports this solution, a solution underpinned by international law and the conditions set forth inter alia in successive United Nations resolutions as well as the Madrid Peace Initiative. Andorra, drawing on its 700-year history of peace, has historically been deeply committed to the principle of neutrality. Over the last 2 years, we've followed with great disquiet the situation unfolding in the Middle East, and in particular the situation in Gaza. Repeated violations of international law as well as humanitarian law have led us to a position of active neutrality. We firmly and repeatedly condemned the terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas in Israel on the 7th of October 2023. We've called for the release of hostages. At the same time, we've expressed deep regret at just how violent the response to these attacks is. We also regretted indiscriminate attacks on civilians, which have claimed the lives of almost 60,000 people, the majority of them women and children. This spiral of violence has resulted in a catastrophic humanitarian situation, with access to civilians already facing a terrible situation obstructed. The situation is, let me repeat it, unbearable. Andorra would like to once again call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire, as well as respect for international humanitarian law, as well as the unconditional release of all hostages. We've supported the resolutions adopted by the United Nations General Assembly, resolutions calling for the protection of civilians, for a guarantee of safe and unfettered access for humanitarian aid going into Gaza, as well as for the protection of humanitarian personnel in accordance with international law. Against this backdrop, we'd like to reiterate our full support for UNRWA, which has many of its humanitarian workers among the victims. In our view, UNRWA remains an indispensable actor in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, aggression is never the solution. Violence is never the answer. Terror is never the solution. The solution lies in dialogue. The solution requires respect for international law. Andorra has already spoken in favor of Palestine becoming a fully fledged member of our organization. Constructive dialogue, bringing together all actors under the same conditions, bringing them to the table, can only be of benefit for a lasting solution. We stand ready to take an additional step. Our government is working so that in the near future we can be in a position to recognize the state of Palestine. Co-chairs, since the adoption of Resolution 79/81 by the General Assembly in December of last year, the 8 working groups working under your auspices have considered the various aspects paving the way for peace in the Middle East on a viable and robust basis. As we prepare to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, it is high time to renew and to reiterate our commitments to the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter. This conference is the time to prove that we are actors forging effective and inclusive multilateralism. Multilateralism which goes beyond our differences and allows us to come up with solutions to complex crises. I stand convinced that we will manage to garner the necessary consensus to achieve a viable solution, together with a realistic roadmap and the means for effective action. I thank you.
Je remercie la ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Andorra. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Torgerdur Katrín Gunnarsdóttir, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Iceland.
Distinguished co-chairs, dear colleagues, Iceland recognized the independence and sovereignty of the State of Palestine in 2011, being one of the first in Western Europe to do so. Our position then and now is firmly founded in our belief in equal rights of both peoples to self-determination, Israelis and Palestinians, and the conviction that it is the only way forward to build lasting peace and stability in the region. We applaud, of course, France for announcing that they now intend to take the same step here in New York in September, and we encourage others to do the same. There are those who claim that recognition of Palestine is and would be a reward to terrorist groups that oppose peace. I say, however, that recognition is not a gift. It is a rightful affirmation of statehood necessary to enable meaningful negotiation between equals and to give effect to inalienable right of all peoples to self-determination. Mr. Chair, looking back in history, while the conflict which followed the vote in the UN back in 1947 caused great pain and suffering, it also gave rise to the State of Israel and came to represent the fulfilled right of the Jewish people to their own state and their right to self-determination. Incidentally, it fell to Iceland's first permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Thors, to present the draft resolution on recommending the two states, one Jewish and one Arab, before the General Assembly. What has, however, been tragically unfulfilled ever since is the other half of the equation, an independent Arab state in Palestine, realizing the right of Palestinians to self-determination. Regrettably, the prospects to two states living side by side in peace and prosperity have diminished over the past decade, especially in the last 20 months, and there are those who want to take it off the table altogether. This distinguished audience cannot stand. As we gather here this week in New York, surely everyone present, as well as those absent, must realize that the situation in Gaza and in the West Bank has long since become unbearable, absolutely unbearable. We simply cannot continue in the same way. We need to turn to the solution recognized as the only sustainable solution to this most difficult of issues, the two-state solution. We must reaffirm that the people of Israel have the right to live in peace and security, free from terrorism, incitement, and free from hate. And equally, the Palestinian people also have the right to live in dignity, with sovereignty, on their own land, within internationally recognized borders, free from violence, oppression, and occupation. Mr. Chair, Iceland condemned in the strongest terms the heinous terrorist attack by Hamas on 7th of October 2023, and we continue to demand the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. We furthermore agree with President Abbas's important statement in June that Hamas can have no role in the future governance of Gaza or other parts of Palestine. At the same time, we protest unequivocally the unacceptable civilian death toll in Israel's ongoing military campaign in Gaza, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, as well as the prolonged restriction on humanitarian access to Gaza. Israel's military campaign in Gaza is simply an affront to the concept of international law. We also condemn settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank and reject outright the expansion by Israel of its illegal settlements in the West Bank. This is an obvious and blatant annexation designed to obstruct the realization of the two-state solution and contradicts international law. The advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice has given us a very clear compass. No state may recognize changes imposed by force or through occupation, including in East Jerusalem, except through mutual agreement. Co-chairs, the future state of Palestine must be built on the foundations of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. Political and institutional reform may be necessary, but with support from the international community, the state of Palestine can well succeed based on the foundation already erected by the Palestinian Authority and by international partners such as UNRWA. To reconfirm Iceland's continued engagement and support, I'm looking forward to signing a memorandum of understanding with Palestine, which enshrines Iceland's intention to support Palestinians and the strengthening of the Palestinian institutions. And in conclusion, to all the people, the innocent children, women, disabled people, older people, men and families, we say, we see your suffering in this horrific situation. We see your resilience and your right to peace. And to the rest of the world, we say, the time for action is now. Not after more lives are lost, not after more walls go up. The time is right now. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Iceland. I now give the floor to His Excellency Alberto van Claveren, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Chile.
Mr. Co-Chairs, Your Highness, Excellencies, allow me to begin by expressing the thanks of the Government of Chile to France and Saudi Arabia for convening this conference and for your leadership in the organization of this process. The tragedy that we have been experiencing since the 7th of October 2023, following the brutal terrorist attack by Hamas against Israel, has cruelly made plain the urgent need to break the cycle of violence that the region has been in for decades. Chile robustly condemned that attack and called for the immediate release of the hostages. And it has also condemned all forms of violence against civilians without distinction, including the indiscriminate attacks on the Palestinian population in Gaza, whose suffering today is intolerable. International humanitarian law establishes clear limits, even in wartime. No self-defense can justify collective punishment, the systematic destruction of civil infrastructure, or the denial of humanitarian assistance. The images of women, children, and older persons caught under fire, killed while waiting for assistance, or attacked in places of worship, such as the Catholic Holy Family Church, require us to raise our voices and act. The international community cannot remain indifferent. There is an urgent need to establish a permanent, immediate ceasefire that puts an end to the hostilities, one that allows for unrestricted humanitarian access, and above all, which opens the way for a definitive political solution based on international law and the binding resolutions of this organization. Chile recognizes and values the mediation efforts carried out by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States, and reaffirms its full support for the work of UNRWA, the importance of which in Gaza is irreplaceable. Its neutrality was validated by the recent external review, and it is essential that states ensure its ongoing financing. At the same time, It is essential that we strengthen Palestinian institutions, which will have to take on greater responsibilities for civil administration and reconstruction. In the light of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, Chile also calls for the contribution of women as relevant actors when it comes to peace. Co-chairs, the two-state solution is not an abstract aspiration. It is a commitment made by the international community more than 7 decades ago, enshrined in multiple resolutions of the General Assembly and the Security Council. Regrettably, today, its viability is in jeopardy. The situation in the occupied West Bank, where acts of violence against civilians continue alongside the worrying expansion of illegal settlements, constitutes a grave threat to international law and to any real possibility for lasting peace. The advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice in July 2024 unequivocally reaffirmed the illegal nature of these practices. Chile actively participated in that case and fully supports the court's conclusions. We urge all states and international organizations to take them on board and to put them into practice. Moreover, Chile intervened before the International Court of Justice in the case brought by South Africa under the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, and, together with Mexico, issued a referral to the International Criminal Court to strengthen the investigation into presumed war crimes and crimes against humanity. Our commitment to international justice and to the protection of human rights is unwavering. We also recall that Resolution 2735 of the Security Council prohibits any demographic or territorial change in Gaza. The unity, contiguity, and integrity of the occupied Palestinian territories must be respected. We call upon the government of Israel to immediately stop the expansion of settlements in the West Bank and to fulfill its obligation as occupying power to effectively protect the civilian population under its control. Mr. Co-Chairs, the only sustainable path towards just and lasting peace in the Middle East is the solution of two states living together in peace and security within secure, mutually recognized and agreed borders, and with Jerusalem as the future shared capital. There can be no security for Israel nor dignity for the Palestinian people if there is not mutual recognition of their fundamental rights. Thank you.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Chile. I now give the floor to His Excellency Shaya Mohsin Zindani, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriate Affairs of Yemen.
His Highness Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, His Excellency French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot of France, Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, please allow me to extend my appreciation to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Republic of France for organizing this high-level international conference on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. This reflects their keenness to support efforts to achieve just and lasting peace in the region and promote regional and international peace and security. The conference is an important step and a historic moment to revive the political process, promote the effective implementation of the two-state solution, and bring the Israeli occupation to an end, thus achieving the aspirations of the brotherly Palestinian people to exercise their inalienable legitimate rights and establish their independent sovereign state along the 4 June 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. The Republic of Yemen underscores the importance of a credible, serious, time-bound, internationally brokered political process to advance the implementation of the two-state solution and end the occupation in accordance with UN resolutions and the Arab Peace Initiative. We hope that this conference, given its practical nature, will lead to tangible and realistic results that will achieve peace, enforce the two-state solution, and guarantee the legitimate rights of the Palestinian people. This can be done by promoting the international recognition of the State of Palestine. We welcome France's announcement that it will recognize the State of Palestine. We call on other countries to recognize the State of Palestine if they have not yet done so. We thank those countries that have already done so. The State of Palestine must be admitted as a fully fledged member of the UN. All unilateral measures must come to an end, including the illegal settlement policy by Israel as the occupying power in the West Bank. Annexation, home demolitions, and displacement must stop because they undermine the prospects of a peaceful settlement and of a just and lasting peace. They also erode the two-state solution. Financial and political support must be provided to the Palestinian government, and efforts to unify Palestinian institutions in the West Bank and Gaza Strip under one national authority must be supported. The Arab Islamic Plan for early recovery of Gaza must be supported. The plan was put forward by Egypt in coordination with the State of Palestine and was endorsed by the League of Arab States and the OIC. UNRWA must be supported so that it can carry out its irreplaceable humanitarian mandate of providing assistance to the Palestinians, thus averting catastrophic humanitarian consequences. The humanitarian situation in Gaza has reached unprecedented catastrophic levels, with the total collapse of infrastructure and health system, with power outages and water shortage. Schools are destroyed, and starvation is instrumentalized as a weapon of war, jeopardizing the lives of millions. The blockade is a collective punishment and a flagrant violation of international law and IHL. We call for an immediate and lasting ceasefire, for the entry of humanitarian assistance, for the lifting of siege. International protection must be accorded to the Palestinian people. The ongoing Israeli aggression and the flagrant violations against the Palestinians in the West Bank must also come to an end. Thank you for your kind attention.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Expatriate Affairs of Yemen. I now give the floor to His Excellency Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zayani, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bahrain.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, His Excellency Mr. Jean-Noël Barrot, His Excellency Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished guests, may God's peace and blessings be upon you. I extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to the sisterly Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the friendly Republic of France for their efforts in organizing this international conference. We appreciate the support provided by the Secretary General of the United Nations for initiatives that create a conducive environment for peace in the Middle East. At the outset, we emphasize that the Kingdom of Bahrain has always been a champion of peace and security, calling for a stable and secure environment where all peoples of the region can flourish regardless of their religious, sectarian, ethnic, or ideological differences. The Kingdom of Bahrain believes that the legacy we leave for future generations is rooted in ensuring security, stability, and prosperity. Its achievement depends on our collective ability to confront ongoing challenges, mainly the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This chronic, tragic issue has hindered regional peace and stability and impacted many countries. We, in the Kingdom of Bahrain, recognize that a just and lasting solution can only be achieved through direct negotiations and diplomatic dialogue between all parties, leading to the establishment of an independent Palestinian state coexisting peacefully with Israel. Our vision envisions normal relations between the Israeli and Palestinian peoples and all countries of the region. This ambition can be achieved with good intentions and if everyone commits to the goal of achieving sustainable peace. To advance this vision, we urgently call for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, prioritizing humanitarian relief and the swift release of hostages. The current humanitarian crisis underscores our shared responsibility to safeguard human dignity and the fundamental rights to life, liberty, and security for all peoples of the region. This noble call was echoed during the Bahrain summit in May 2024, when Arab leaders gathered in the Kingdom of Bahrain under the chairmanship of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. The summit reflected the leaders' collective commitment to a peaceful solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict through the convening of an international conference that facilitates negotiations between all concerned parties. The Kingdom of Bahrain calls on you to strengthen mutual cooperation, overcome differences, and focus on our shared goals of peace, stability, and prosperity. Together, we can build a future that respects the rights and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians, and promotes the spirit of cooperation and coexistence for all peoples of the region and throughout the world. Thank you for your kind attention. May God's peace, mercy, and blessings be upon you.
Je remercie.
I thank His Excellency the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Bahrain, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Abdul Qadir Hussein Omar, Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Djibouti.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سمو الأمير فيصل فرحان آل سعود وزير خارجية المملكة العربية السعودية الشقيقة.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most benevolent,
République française.
Excellencies, Ministers, Secretary General, co-chairs, distinguished delegates.
À l'entame de mes propos,
At the outset, on behalf of the Republic of Djibouti, we would like to extend our heartfelt congratulations to the French Republic and to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Congratulations for convening this high-level international conference for the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the effective implementation of the two-state solution. We'd also like to thank the co-chairs for their commitment and for preparing the 3 round tables. We hope that the roundtables will result in concrete and action-oriented proposals. The Republic of Djibouti stands convinced that the lasting settlement of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict lies in meticulous respect for international law by all actors, first and foremost, Israel.
أصحاب السمو والمعالي والسعادة.
Your Highness, Excellencies, co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen, the Republic of Djibouti, its leadership and its people have stood firm on Palestine on a just solution. We've supported the two-state solution very clearly. That is the only viable choice that can put an end to the occupation and uphold the rights, as well as the security of all people in the region. Here, we would like to reiterate that security can only be built, cannot be built on injustice. Stability cannot be imposed by sieges. You need justice to achieve peace, serious negotiations, and sincere policies. We cannot remain silent given what's happening today in the Gaza Strip, an inhuman tragedy of unbearable proportions, a deep wound in our universal conscience, an affront to the fundamental values on which our international order rests. The suffering we've been witnessing has robbed humanity of its very meaning, of its substance. That is, knowing how to stand up and reject injustice. This throws into sharp relief the dramatic failure of our collective conscience, faced with young lives cut short, the suffering of families, the targeted destruction of hospitals, schools, and homes, and this during an unbearable blockade which has claimed innocent lives. This is morally unacceptable, legally unjustifiable, and humanly intolerable for humanity. It's a flagrant violation of international humanitarian law and the fundamental principles of human dignity, as well as of our shared responsibility. It is long overdue for the international community to take action, not to further its own interests or out of some calculus, but out of duty, out of loyalty for the principles of justice, peace, and the responsibility we solemnly shoulder. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the lasting settlement of the Arab-Israeli conflict cannot forgo a return to the foundations laid down in the Arab Peace Initiative adopted in 2002. This initiative, supported by all Arab states, is a constructive and balanced framework. Today, it is an unavoidable model for any just and comprehensive solution that is in keeping with international law. It's also worth recalling the importance of the advisory opinion issued by the International Court of Justice on the 19th of July 2024. This is a legal milestone of great importance. Through the opinion, the court clearly determined the imperative legal principles framing the consequences of the policies imposed by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. This opinion reinforced not only the legitimacy of the rights of the Palestinian people, but also committed the entire international community to take stock of the consequences thereof. In this spirit, we call on all states to fully respect their legal obligations, an indispensable precondition for the emergence of a lasting, just solution in keeping with international law. We urge on all those who haven't yet done so to immediately recognize the state of Palestine, following in the footsteps of 148 states who have already done so, in keeping with their duty to support the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. I'd also like to seize this opportunity to renew the congratulations issued by His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh of the Republic of Djibouti to his counterpart, President Emmanuel Macron, on the announcement of the official recognition of the State of Palestine by France at the upcoming session of the General Assembly. This historic decision, taken at a crucial moment for the Palestinian people, helps to build up the momentum towards lasting peace. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on the diplomatic front, Djibouti calls on all states to resolutely commit to the objectives of this conference and to actively support the implementation of the two-state solution. This solution remains the only viable path to a peaceful settlement that would guarantee the existence of two sovereign and independent states living side by side within 1967 borders, living in peace and security. We must dare to change history. Yes, we can meet the aspirations of the Palestinian people, recognizing their legitimate aspiration to live in their own state, on their own territory. I thank you.
Je remercie le ministre.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Djibouti. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Selinda Sosa Lunda, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Plurinational State of Bolivia.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. In particular, I would like to thank the co-chairs from France and Saudi Arabia for having made this meeting possible, together with the many representatives of member states that are present here today in this assembly. I would like to greet my fellow foreign ministers, ambassadors, and each and every one of the delegates that have come here today, because the greatest value that brings us here is the right to life and the right to live in peace in this world that we share. My brothers, co-chairs, I would like to express the greetings from our brother, President Luis Arce Catacora, and above all from the Bolivian people. Today, on behalf of this people of peace, I make an urgent appeal for an immediate ceasefire and an immediate end to the genocide being experienced by the brother people of Palestine. We would like to reiterate our firm stance on the two-state solution. We consider it to be the most just and lasting path towards peace for these brotherly peoples. This vision is based on the resolutions of the United Nations, and in that regard, it is based on the common sense of justice that should be applied as soon as possible, so as to put an end to so much unnecessary suffering by the brotherly people of Palestine. However, Israel is turning a deaf ear to the international outrage and continues to expand its settlements on Palestinian-occupied territories. It continues to demolish homes, health centers, schools, and above all, continues to displace entire families, blocking access to food, water, bread, all sorts of humanitarian assistance. Great efforts are being made to bring that humanitarian assistance in, but because of the blockade, it is not arriving. It is engaging in violence against civilians that is causing more and more pain and grief every day in Gaza. This impunity must not continue. These actions are a violation of international law, particularly of the Geneva Convention. My brothers, co-chairs, in the past few days, the situation has grown much more worrying. We see with outrage how Israel is using hunger now as a weapon of war, inflicting hunger on children, women, and older persons. As a mother, how much pain do I feel in my heart to see a child, to see a baby dying today due to a lack of milk, due to a lack of water. And that is something that we cannot turn a blind eye to and simply say here that nothing's happening. Gaza has become a land of walking corpses. Hundreds of people have been killed while they were on their way to find food and water. I would like to ask in this assembly, civilians, children, older persons, the press, and United Nations officials themselves, when did they all become targets in war? How much have we done as human beings to stop this catastrophe that is playing out in Palestine? What is happening in Gaza is a humanitarian catastrophe, and it must be stopped immediately. I take this opportunity to applaud the fact that more than 130 countries are here today, so that this voice can be heard, so that this voice can be raised up, and so that this does not just become yet another meeting of the United Nations General Assembly, but rather to make sure that it is a meeting with results, so that tomorrow we don't continue to hear about children dying of hunger, women and men dying of hunger. Those that are financing this war are complicit and guilty in these crimes that are taking place in Palestine, and that must be punished. We have to really establish precedents so that this is never repeated again in any other country, and so that we do not have to bear this on our shoulders once again. And for that reason, we propose two measures. First of all, we propose that all countries here present speak out about the situation of hunger, and that we decide that the UN formally declare the need for measures to be taken, relevant measures, to truly stop this situation of starvation that is being used currently as a weapon of war by Israel. And secondly, for the International Court of Justice to sanction Israel for the crime of subjecting our brothers and sisters from Palestine to hunger, to starvation. Co-chairs, this situation requires firm decisions to be taken. We should not just focus on palliative measures. The genocide has to be stopped, and the two-state solution has to be implemented. We have to ensure the fulfillment and the implementation of the resolutions that are issued at this UN General Assembly meeting. Bolivia urges countries to take on a more active role in the defense of the rights of the Palestinian people, and to promote effective multilateralism and pursue a peace that does not humiliate anyone and that recognizes everyone. And for that reason, I would like to congratulate the brotherly people of France for recognizing the state of Palestine. And that should serve as an example for many states, for us to recognize the existence of Palestine as a sovereign and free country. Because there can be no security without justice, there can be no peace without dignity, and there can be no solutions without mutual recognition and without recognizing the right of the other to exist. We reiterate firmly to the brotherly people of Palestine that that people has the right to self-determination, the right to live in liberty and in peace, without occupation and without fear, without the fear of being attacked, tortured, and the threat of death. Dialogue, respect, and legality should be the pillars, the fundamental pillars of the people of Palestine. It causes me a great deal of pain when I have to speak about the people of Palestine. Those of us that are far away only see the stories in the news, but what is really being experienced by the brotherly people of Palestine is much more serious. But with firmness and the support of many countries, such as Germany, which is putting together an air bridge to ensure the arrival of food. That already constitutes recognition, and I would like to congratulate and thank many countries, really. Bolivia is a small country, but we have been firm from the outset, and we have made many efforts to ensure that humanitarian assistance reached Palestine. I would like you to help me in saying, long live free Palestine.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Je remercie la ministre des Affaires étrangères.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the plurinational state of Bolivia. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Mbaye Mohamed, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, responsible for the Arab world, the diaspora, Francophonie, and African integration of Comoros.
Monsieur le Co-Président,
Distinguished co-chairs, Secretary General, President of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, Salam alaikum. In 2015, in this same house, a symbol of diplomacy, living together, and international law, global goals were adopted so as to eradicate poverty, protect our planet, and ensure that all humans live in peace and prosperity, that they will live in peace and prosperity by 2030. A decade later, as we inch closer to the 2030 horizon, a deadline we fixed ourselves for offering humanity the right to live in peace and prosperity without any distinction based on race or religion. At this time, the Palestinian people is confronted with a choice between death by bombs or death by hunger. Every day, men, women, and children are dying, while we cannot take action to stop this genocide unfolding before our very eyes. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today, even the deaf hear the cries of Palestinian children. The blind can see the bloodbath, the deprivation and desolation of the Palestinian people. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting comes at a crucial point for peace and security in the Middle East. It reflects the renewed will of the international community to revive the peace process on just, equitable, and lasting foundations in keeping with international law and relevant United Nations resolution. Right now, the world has its eyes upon us at a time when international law, a sentinel, a guarantor of global peace and security, is being trampled like never before. It's as if our world had become a wilderness where might makes right. A world which seems to have lost its soul, the soul of our humanity, a world which is lost. So today, when all hope is permissible, will we be able to meet the legitimate expectations of this people, which calls for its right to life, simply to life, to dignity and to hope? A people the suffering of which is the mirror of our collective failure to guarantee peace and justice. The solution proposed by the United Nations, that is, a Palestinian state living peacefully side by side with Israel, is the only way forward. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my country, the Union of the Comoros, is loyal to its principles, respect for international law. We'd like to solemnly reiterate our unswerving support to the two-state solution with East Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Palestine. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Union of the Comoros welcomes the convening of this international conference, co-chaired by France and Saudi Arabia under the auspices of the United Nations. A meeting being held just a few weeks before the 80th session of the General Debate of the General Assembly. Given the pace of massacres being perpetrated against the Palestinian people, by the time the next General Assembly takes place, we risk having on our conscience the fact that we didn't manage to act to save thousands of innocent lives. Thus, we are duty-bound to come out of this conference with the deepest conviction that we resolutely placed the future of the Palestinian people atop our international agenda. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for decades now, voices have cried out to denounce the injustice being subjected on the Palestinian people. After decades of suffering endured by the Palestinian people, the time for truth and action has come. This conference, will it be one which recognizes the right to life and justice for the Palestinian people, or will it be one characterized by ineffectual speeches, shorn of any immediate prospects? Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what the answer is, one thing is certain. Someday, history will judge us.
أشكر معالي وزير الخارجية والتعاون الدولي المسؤول عن العالم العربي والشتى.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Francophonie, the Diaspora and African Integration, and on behalf of Saudi Arabia, France, and the chairs of the working groups of the conference, Brazil, Canada, Egypt, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Japan, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Mexico, the Kingdom of Norway, Qatar, Spain, Turkey, the United Kingdom, the European Union, the League of Arab States, on behalf of all of these, to adopt the outcome document and its annexes as per Resolution 79/81 adopted on the 3rd of December last year. The outcomes are in fact proposals across the humanitarian, legal, security, and narratives pillar, so as to implement the two-state solution and guarantee peace and security for all. We call on you to support this document before the end of the 79th session of the General Assembly by contacting the missions of Saudi Arabia and France in New York.
Congratulations. Bon travail.
والآن أعطي الكلمة إلى سعادة توسكاسا أويومورا الممثل.
I now give the floor to His Excellency Tsukasa Uemura, Special Representative of the Government of Japan, Special Envoy of the Government of Japan for the Middle East Peace.
Thank you, co-chairs. We extend our sincere gratitude to France and Saudi Arabia for their leadership in convening this high-level conference. In collaboration with Norway, our trusted partner and co-chair of the Working Group 4, we have engaged in vital discussions on practical measures to enhance the economic viability of the Palestinian state as part of our collective efforts toward a two-state solution. Co-chairs, Excellencies, the people of Gaza are enduring a grave humanitarian crisis marked by hunger and malnutrition. The conflict, now spanning a total of 21 months, have caused significant loss of lives, including innocent civilians and aid workers, such as staff from UNRWA. This is a profound tragedy. Humanitarian aid must never be contingent on political or military considerations. It is imperative that the United Nations and humanitarian agencies can operate independently and impartially. In this regard, we reaffirm that UNRWA continues to play an indispensable role in supporting Palestine refugees across the region. Co-chairs and Excellencies, Japan reiterates our urgent call for Hamas to immediately and unconditionally release all remaining hostages. In the meantime, Japan firmly opposes any action that undermines the realization of a two-state solution, including the potential reoccupation of Gaza and the expansion of settlement activities in the West Bank. It is critical that all parties seize the momentum generated by this conference, renounce military solutions, and work earnestly towards the resumption of the Gaza ceasefire and the broader peace process. أصحاب السمو والسعادة زملائي الأعزاء.
Highness, Excellencies, dear colleagues, Japan fully recognizes the legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to create an independent state. Our position is constant. We support these efforts with all of the resources at our disposal. In this context, Japan has consistently supported the two-state solution. And when it was a member of the Security Council last year, it voted in favor of the resolution supporting the request from Palestine to become a fully fledged member of the United Nations. When considering the outcomes of this high-level conference, based on the principles of strengthening peace, we shall continue our comprehensive evaluation of the question of the recognition of the Palestinian state, notably the right time to do so. Thank you.
Je remercie le représentant spécial.
I thank the Special Representative of the Government of Japan and Special Envoy of the Government of Japan for the Middle East peace. And I now give the floor to His Excellency Jun Tsai, Special Envoy of the Chinese Government on the Middle East issue.
Co-chairs, colleagues. First, on behalf of China, I thank France, Saudi Arabia, and the UN for preparing for the conference. In December last year, a resolution was adopted at the General Assembly asking to hold a conference with the theme of peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution. Today, we're gathering here at the UN for comprehensive, just, and lasting peace between Palestine and Israel to send the strongest voice ever calling for political settlement of the two-state solution. But at this very moment, the war flames are still raging in Gaza, innocent lives are still being lost, and unprecedented humanitarian crisis persists, eroding the very foundation for implementing the two-state solution. Under the current urgent circumstances, the international community must not only sit down for solution, but also stand up for action, taking real steps to advance the two-state solution. To this end, China's proposals are as followed. First, we must pursue a comprehensive ceasefire with the utmost urgency to ease the humanitarian crisis. For over 600 days of the conflict, Gaza has already been reduced to rubble and ruins. Amid the hail of bullets and shells, civilian safety cannot be guaranteed, let alone progress toward a political solution. The authority of the Security Council must be upheld. China urges all relevant parties to earnestly implement the relevant Security Council and UNGA resolutions, immediately cease hostilities in Gaza, and promptly release hostages and those held captive. China asks Israel to fulfill its obligations under international humanitarian law, immediately and fully restore humanitarian access to Gaza, and supports the UN and international organizations in playing a leading role in delivering aid to Gaza. China calls on the Security Council to take all actions necessary to end this worst humanitarian catastrophe of the 21st century as soon as possible and create practical conditions for implementing the two-state solution. Second, We must uphold the principle of Palestinians governing Palestine for the governance of Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza and the West Bank are inseparable parts of the Palestinian territory. Any forced alteration of Gaza's status and encroachment upon the West Bank will bring no peace, but only new chaos, and bring a failing prospect of the two-state solution. China firmly opposes all words and deeds that violate international law and that seek to hollow out the two-state solution. China opposes settlement building, supports the Gaza reconstruction plan endorsed by the Arab Summit and the OIC Ministerial, and supports the PA in exercising effective jurisdiction over all Palestinian territory, including Gaza and the West Bank. China is ready to contribute its share to Gaza reconstruction. Third, we must support internal solidarity of Palestine and assist Palestine in strengthening governance capacity and economic resilience. Different factions in Palestine should seek common grounds and unite as one, which is the political precondition for an independent state of Palestine. China has long been dedicated to advancing national solidarity and unity of Palestine and supported the PA in strengthening authority, governance capacity, and effectiveness. Last year, in July, China invited all Palestinian factions to Beijing for reconciliation talks with the signing of a Beijing Declaration. Economy and livelihood are the material foundation for Palestinian sustainable development. China, through bilateral and multilateral channels, provides aids and training programs for Palestine. And China is ready to join the international community to continue humanitarian assistance and development support to Palestine. Fourth, we must safeguard the peace momentum for implementing the two-state solution. The current conflict is the bitter consequence of the prolonged marginalization of the question of Palestine. Now it awakens global attention. International sympathy for Palestine and support for the two-state solution have reached unprecedented levels. We all should seize this opportunity to demonstrate greater resolve and build stronger synergy to translate the two-state solution into action. China firmly supports the establishment of an independent state of Palestine based on the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as its capital and enjoying full sovereignty. China calls on the UN to promptly admit Palestine as a full member state. China urges relevant countries not to set obstacles in the process, and appeals to countries that haven't yet recognized Palestine to do so without delay. Fifth, we must have a vision of common, comprehensive, cooperative, and sustainable security for achieving lasting peace and stability in the Middle East. The question of Palestine is the core of the Middle East issue, while situation in the Middle East also impacts the prospect for resolving the question of Palestine. China maintains that Palestine, Israel, and all the other regional countries rely on each other to enjoy security. Unilateral security approaches are untenable. Only common security can guarantee lasting peace by eliminating the breeding grounds for violence and hatred. Israel's legitimate security concerns should be respected, and Palestine's rights to existence, statehood, and development must also be realized. China sincerely hopes to see the peaceful coexistence of regional states at an early date, which will lead to peace, stability, and shared prosperity of the region. China stands ready to work with the international community to play a constructive role in de-escalating the regional tension. Colleagues, for however long the road is, we shall reach the end by walking. However difficult a task is, we shall accomplish it by doing. The two-state solution is the only feasible path to resolving the question of Palestine, and it represents the broadest international consensus. China hopes that this conference will inject new momentum into the realization of the two-state solution with a clear timeline and roadmap. China will keep working with the international community to achieve ceasefire in Gaza, and on this basis promote an early, comprehensive, just, and lasting solution to the question of Palestine. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I thank the Special Envoy of the Government of China on the Middle East issue. I now give the floor to His Excellency Armanata Christiawan Nasir, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Indonesia.
Co-chairs, Excellencies, let me begin by thanking the government of France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this vital conference on implementing the two-state solution. We are here today to stand for humanity, to demand justice for the Palestinian people, to push for a lasting solution to the most protracted conflict in the United Nations history. For over 7 decades, Palestinians have been denied the rights to independence. Today, they are being denied not only for freedom, but the right to live as human beings, the right to exist. Every day, the toll of human suffering rises. Civilians perish while queuing for food. The very fabric of Palestinian society is being torn apart. When food aid becomes a death sentence, how much worse must it get before we act? We have all spoken loudly. We have condemned. But now we must ask, how much longer will we allow this to continue? How much more life must be lost before the multilateral system fulfill its purpose to uphold peace and justice? Excellencies, Indonesia is proud to co-chair the Roundtable on Security with Italy. We bring the voice of solidarity, of principles, and of actions. This conference must be more than just another UN gathering. It must be a rallying point for global conscience. The future must not be a one-state reality built on annexation and apartheid. It must be a two-state solution where Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security within recognized borders based on the 1967 line, in accordance with international law, UN resolutions, and international agreements. We therefore welcome the joint statement and leadership of nearly 30 countries calling for an end to the war and humanitarian crisis in Gaza. We also welcome other global initiatives supporting the state of Palestine. These efforts must be the spark, not the ceiling of our ambitions. Against this backdrop, let me highlight 3 essential points. First, recognition is not symbolic, it's strategic. Recognizing Palestine is not a favor, it is a duty under international law. To recognize Palestine is to stand for justice. It is to believe in the UN Charter. It is to level the diplomatic playing field. A two-state solution begins with political recognition. Only then can genuine peace negotiation take place. Only then can we end the illegal occupation as confirmed by the International Court of Justice. Second, hostilities must end. A ceasefire is not a tactic, it is a moral imperative. Humanitarian aid must flow. Civilians must be protected for both Palestinians and Israelis. President Prabowo has affirmed Indonesia's readiness to contribute to peace, including through providing personnel to support stabilization force efforts in Gaza under a UN mandate. We are not just advocating for peace, we are ready to help build it on the ground. Third, the future of Palestine must be Palestinian-led. Rebuilding Gaza and shaping its political future must be owned by the Palestinian people. No one can build a state of Palestine, only Palestinians can. Any attempt to forcibly displace them or impose conditions on their sovereignty must be firmly rejected. A strong, unified state of Palestine with full control over its territory, institution, and foundation is the foundation for sustainable peace. Only then can Israel truly be welcomed as a peaceful neighbor in a secure Middle East. Despite the devastation, Indonesia continues to invest in the Palestinian youth, particularly through education, because we believe one day these young people will lead a free, democratic, and sovereign Palestine. Excellencies, the time has come for decisive, irreversible steps to realize the two-state solutions. Indonesia stands ready to work with all countries to this end. I thank you.
Je remercie
I thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs of Indonesia, and I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. David Lammy, the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, Commonwealth and Development, United Kingdom.
Well, thank you, Chair. We gather today at a dark moment. 660 days since the Israeli hostages were first cruelly taken by Hamas terrorists. There is no possible justification for this suffering and only a clear duty that we help to bring it to an end. The devastation in Gaza is heartbreaking. Children are starving, and Israel's drip feeding of aid has horrified the world. These are an affront to the values of the Charter of the United Nations. Last week, Britain led 28 countries in demanding an immediate end to this terrible war, and we set the region on a path to a better future. That requires not just an immediate ceasefire, but a plan to make it last. Colleagues, our history means that Britain bears a special burden of responsibility to support the two-state solution. In the last 12 months, the United Kingdom government has repeatedly taken action in the face of the current crisis. We restored funding to UNRWA. We suspended arms exports that could be used in Gaza. We provided tens of millions of pounds in humanitarian assistance. We signed a landmark agreement with the Palestinian Authority, and we stood up for the independence of the international courts. We have delivered 3 sanctions packages on violent settlers, and we suspended trade negotiations with the Israeli government, and we sanctioned far-right Israeli ministers for incitement. Yet, dear friends, the situation on the ground continues to worsen, and the two-state solution is in peril. And so to reach that better future, we must first reflect on the past. 108 years ago, my predecessor as British Foreign Secretary, Arthur Balfour, signed the declaration that bears his name. It helped lay the foundations for a homeland for the Jewish people. And Britain can be proud of that. Our support for Israel, its right to exist, and the security of its people is steadfast. However, the Balfour Declaration came with the solemn promise that nothing shall be done, nothing which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the Palestinian people as well. And colleagues, this has not been upheld, and it is a historical injustice which continues to unfold. As diplomats and politicians, we have become accustomed to uttering the words, a two-state solution. Countless times, this Assembly and the Security Council has proclaimed that there must be a two-state resolution. Resolution after resolution. Resolution 181, Resolution 242, Resolution 446, Resolution 1515, Resolution 2334. These cannot be just numbers on a page, but the conviction of a deeply frustrated world. Chairs, Hamas must never be rewarded for the monstrous attack on October the 7th. It must immediately release the hostages, agree to an immediate ceasefire, accept it will have no role in governing Gaza, and commit to disarmament. But Hamas are not the Palestinian people, and there is no contradiction between support for Israel's security and support for Palestinian statehood. Indeed, the opposite is true. Let me be clear. The Netanyahu government's rejection of a two-state solution is wrong. It's wrong morally and it's wrong strategically. It harms the interests of the Israeli people, closing off the only path to a just and lasting peace. And that is why we are determined to protect the viability of a two-state solution. And so it is with the hand of history on our shoulders that His Majesty's government therefore intends to recognize the state of Palestine when the UN General Assembly gathers in September here in New York. Friends, we will do this unless the Israeli government acts to end the appalling situation in Gaza, ends its military campaign, and commits to a long, sustainable peace based on a two-state solution. Our demands on Hamas also remain absolute and unwavering. Before the UN General Assembly gathers, we will take stock of how far the parties have come in meeting these steps. No one side will have a veto on recognition through their actions or inactions. But recognition by itself will not change the situation on the ground. That is why we are taking immediate steps as well, like airdropping humanitarian supplies along with our partners in Jordan, getting injured children into British hospitals, and pressing for the resumption of the United Nations humanitarian assistance. We also believe that a lasting ceasefire requires urgent progress on governance and security in Gaza. We are therefore working with allies on a plan for long-term political negotiations and a two-state solution. Chair, there is no better vision for the future of the region than two states. Israelis living within secure borders, recognized and at peace with their neighbors, free from the threat of terrorism, and Palestinians living in their own state in dignity and security, free of occupation. The decades-long conflict between Israelis and Palestinians cannot be managed or contained. It must now be resolved. Britain is ready to play its full and historic part. Thank you very much.
Je remercie très...
I very much thank the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs of the United Kingdom. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Nuh Yilmaz, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Turkey.
Esteemed Ministers, Excellencies, dear colleagues, I would like to start by expressing my appreciation to the co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, for taking the lead to revitalize the efforts for the implementation of the two-state solution. I also express our thanks to our fellow co-chair, Ireland, in the working group on preserving the two-state solution for its close cooperation. The two-state solution remains central to not only the peaceful settlement of the conflict, but also to preserving sustainable peace and security in the broader region. We should remember the reason why the two-state solution is not achieved so far: occupation. Therefore, any realistic solution has to face with this cruel nature of the occupation. In other words, the root cause of the problem, i.e., the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory, should be addressed for any viable solution. Again, let me remind you that the reason why this conference was delayed was Israel's attacks on Iran. This is a testament to the urgency of ending Israel's aggression, expansionism, and policy of strategic destabilization in the region. Israel has strategically been exporting instability to the whole region by seeking for endless wars with hegemonic intentions. No central authority is spared, weakened state structures are sought, failed states are desired and even engineered. That begins and ends with the establishment of a sovereign Palestinian state, based on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Horrendous images of innocent civilians, children, babies dying from hunger or shootings in Gaza shake all of us. The images that come out of Gaza in the 21st century will haunt humanity for the years to come. The genocide committed by Israel in Gaza is a dark stain on the international order. There are signs that the international order is being adversely affected by the continuation of this genocide. The rules-based international system is being called into question. An immediate and permanent ceasefire is the most urgent priority. Under the current circumstances, a ceasefire is not possible if the aggressor is not forced to do so. As the international community, we have the obligation to put an end to this man-made human catastrophe. For that, we have to collectively put together more pressure on Israel. For this, the recognition of the state of Palestine is the most imminent step to take by all those who have not yet done so. Within this framework, we welcome all recent moves for recognition. Aside from these urgent political steps, we should also help the Palestinian Authority in capacity building in all possible ways. In parallel to that, reconstruction efforts must be started without delay. The Arab Reconstruction Plan is the only viable plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. Turkey stands ready to contribute actively to these efforts. We stand at a critical moment. Yes, Palestine needs economic support, capacity building, empowering, trade, and any kind of material and moral support. Yet, we must all understand that this is not enough. Palestine needs more. Palestine needs strong and concrete political solidarity that should go hand in hand with coercive measures such as a UN ban on transfers of arms as well as halting trade with the aggressor. Israel continues to enable illegal settlements. It even goes beyond with its government chanting openly and loudly for the annexation of Palestinian territories. Settlerism is theft, settlerism is crime, settlerism is an anachronistic version of colonialism in the 21st century. Settler terrorism should not go unpunished. Settlers and their enablers must face consequences. Last but not least, the implementation of the two-state solution requires solid institutions and the protection of Palestinian people. Thus, supporting the Palestinian Authority and preventing Israeli actions aiming to uproot the Palestinian nation from their homeland are crucial for any credible roadmap for Palestinian statehood. Excellencies, with regard to the draft outcome document of our conference, particularly its paragraph 11, Turkey is of the opinion that, based on the decades-long Israeli record, the handover of weapons by the Palestinian armed groups should be closely conditioned to the realization of an independent, sovereign, and contiguous Palestinian state on the 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital, or an agreement reached among the Palestinian groups as part of the reconciliation process. But we did not break the silence once again to preserve the unity of the international community. We hope that our concern will be taken into consideration by the member states in their relationships and in the future processes. Turkey will continue its unwavering support for law, justice, and hence the rights of the Palestinian people who are in desperate need of our active and concrete support. Thank you.
أشكر معالي نائب وزير.
I thank His Excellency the Vice Minister of Turkey, and I now give the floor to Mr. Emir Higgins, the Minister of Ireland.
Thank you very much. And I would like to begin by thanking our co-chairs, France and Saudi Arabia, for bringing us together today for this important and historic day. On behalf of Ireland, I reaffirm our unequivocal support for advancing the two-state solution. I endorse the conference outcome document, and I encourage other UN members to do the same. I welcome the announcement by France that it will recognise the State of Palestine, and I acknowledge the statement we've just heard from the United Kingdom. As we meet here today, Palestinians in Gaza are enduring unconscionable suffering. The humanitarian situation has reached catastrophic levels. Mass starvation is spreading across the Gaza Strip. Babies are dying because of a man-made famine. Violence, thirst, starvation are killing people every day. We are seeing the destruction of homes, of hospitals, of lives. The July IPC hunger classification, which was published today, tells us the worst-case scenario of famine is now unfolding in Gaza. The humanitarian system in Palestine is crumbling right when it is needed the most. Israeli hostages remain in captivity with immense suffering for them and their families. And let me reiterate Ireland's unequivocal condemnation of the heinous terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel on the 7th of October. We urgently need to see a ceasefire, and we urgently need to see the release of all hostages. I thank Egypt, Qatar, and the United States for their efforts in securing progress as mediators. There must be an influx of life-saving aid to the people of Gaza. Humanitarian pauses and corridors are long overdue, and they are the bare minimum of what is required. Israel must let aid enter Gaza in sufficient quantities and let the UN and humanitarian organisations do their life-saving work. But instead, people are being killed trying to access aid. Children are starving before our eyes. Aid workers have been killed. This appalling situation shames us all. It is an affront to our common humanity, and it is an affront to the charter of this very organisation. For decades, we have known the only path to a just and a lasting solution to the Israeli-Palestine conflict is the two-state solution. Two states, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace and in security. But for decades, we've seen collective failure to take collective and meaningful action. Today, to those suffering in Gaza and in the West Bank, the two-state solution must seem out of reach. But it cannot be. It cannot be about the long term. It has to be about the here and now. It has to be about today. And the two-state solution is key to achieving the most urgent goal, securing an immediate and sustainable ceasefire and the release of all hostages. The two-state solution is indispensable because it would deliver long-term peace, stability and security for the region as a whole. It is recognised clearly in the UN Security Council Resolution 2735, which rejects any attempt at demographic or territorial change in the Gaza Strip, including any actions that reduce the territory of Gaza. And it also reaffirms the importance of unifying the Gaza Strip with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. And yet, these principles are flouted with total impunity. We cannot stand by. We must demonstrate more clearly that we afford equal value to the security of Israelis and Palestinians. We, the international community, must act. We do not underestimate the difficult journey that lies ahead. In Ireland, we know this from our own experience of overcoming conflict. As former President Mary Robinson said yesterday, the arc of peace is long. And while each conflict is different, Ireland stands ready to share our relevant experience from our peace process. Ireland recognised the state of Palestine last year. We did that because we believe in the equal right to self-determination, to peace, to security, and to dignity for both Israelis and Palestinians alike. We welcome the announcement by France that it will recognise Palestine, and we acknowledge the statement we've just received from the United Kingdom. We encourage other countries to recognise Palestine. We encourage those who have not done so to recognise the State of Israel. The outcome of this high-level conference must be a clear signal to the Palestinian people that we support their right to self-determination and that we support the choice of the Palestinian leadership to achieve this through a peaceful political pathway. We welcome the commitments made by President Abbas in this regard. I reaffirm Ireland's support for the Palestinian Authority and its reform agenda. I call on Israel to release the revenues owed to the Palestinian Authority that it is withholding, revenues collected in tax that are necessary to fund vital services and to pay the salaries of workers in Palestine. This conference must be a turn.
You will just have seen my statement to the UN General Assembly. What I laid out is that the United Kingdom is now on a pathway to recognize the state of Palestine in September before UNGA. We have always believed that there is no better vision for the future of the region than two states. I'll let my words earlier speak for themselves, but I'm very happy to take a few questions. Let me start with the BBC.
Tom Bateman from the BBC, Foreign Secretary, thank you. There is a diminishing amount of Palestine left to recognise. Your critics will say this is because successive UK governments have empowered and facilitated Israeli governments that have made that very state unviable territorially and through the use of arms. How do you address the UK's responsibility when it comes to this? And why has it taken starvation to make you act now? And also, if I may, how much pressure is the UK government putting on the Israeli leadership to allow journalists independent access to Gaza?
Well, look, let me be clear. Since coming to office, we restored funding to UNRWA. It was important that we took the sober decision to suspend arms sales to Israel that could be used in Gaza. And of course, working with our partners, we've done everything possible to get the humanitarian aid into Gaza, to get those trucks in, and to ensure that we fund UK Med. And we've treated 24,000 Palestinians in that period. But the decision that we have taken today puts us on a pathway towards recognition. And over the next 8 weeks, what we are attempting to do is affect the situation on the ground. We have seen the most horrific scenes. The global community is deeply offended by children being shot and killed as they reach out for aid. The time has come for a ceasefire. The time has come to see those hostages released, and the time has come to abate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza, to get them the aid and the medical equipment and supplies that they need. And it is my sincere hope that the decision that we have taken today affects the situation on the ground, and we get to that ceasefire, we get to those hostages coming out as soon as possible. And let me say, it has always been the position of the United Kingdom government that we support aid workers, and we abhor the loss of life of aid workers. And of course, it's essential that journalists are able to go about their business in Gaza and report the facts as they see it without fear or favour. Al Jazeera.
Al-Arabiya.
Ah. I think I had a question for Al Jazeera. I was told Al Jazeera. Is Al Jazeera here?
Al-Arabiya.
Right there.
Thank you, Foreign Secretary. Two questions. Number one is, did your Prime Minister give a heads up to the U.S. President yesterday that he would be making this announcement today? And second question, your recognition of Palestine is conditioned, as you said. It's a pathway to recognition. Why is there this conditionality, and how will your government decide if Israel has met the conditions or not?
Well, let me state it wouldn't be right for me to comment on private conversations between our Prime Minister and the President of the United States, except to say, as you know, that the United Kingdom has the most special of relationships with the United States. We have always been clear that no country has a veto on solemn decisions that we make in the United Kingdom, and you will have seen in my statement that I made reference to the unique position of the UK in relation. And we have made a decision that puts us on a pathway to recognition next month. But what we have attempted to do is to affect the situation on the ground. And I sincerely hope that we see a dramatic improvement in the suffering that we see a commitment to a ceasefire and we see a commitment to a diplomatic process such that we do not get a pause in relation to that ceasefire, but we get an enduring peace. And it's for us to assess those conditions as we get to next month. But the undertaking I made in the General Assembly just a few minutes ago is a solemn undertaking in front of the whole global community. PA, I think. The PA. AP, sorry, AP.
Thank you. To follow up on Tom's question, what the French government has said it's willing to take actions calling on the EU to implement unfreeze money that Israel owes to the Palestinian Authority, to be able to sanction any Israeli settlers that are targeting West Bank settlements. What is the UK planning on doing to be able to coerce or incentivize Israel to fall in line? Will there be an arms embargo? Will there be any sanctions against Israel if they do not comply in this?
Well, the United Kingdom has already taken steps to sanction violent settlers on the ground, and these are decisions that other countries have not taken. We also took decisions to sanction Ben Gvir and Smodrick, and these are decisions that the European Union have not yet taken. We indicated 27 foreign ministers came together with me in a statement just 2 weeks ago, and we indicated that we would take further steps to affect the situation on the ground, and we are clear about that. But today is about achieving the abatement of the suffering that we see on the ground. We have to have those trucks get in, and our assessment is that 25 trucks went in, I think, on Sunday, perhaps up to 35 just in this last period. We have delivered 20 tons of aid with our Jordanian friends into northern Gaza in terms of airdrops to alleviate the suffering, and obviously to ensure that those airdrops landed safely in a clear path. But that will not ease the suffering that we are seeing, the malnourishment that now is widespread, and the fear of starvation that is a global concern. And so the United Kingdom, working with partners, and you've seen us working with our Arab partners, but obviously working alongside France and Saudi Arabia today, we are all attempting to bring an end to this suffering. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thank the Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of Italy. I now give the floor to His Excellency Florian Hahn, Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office of Germany.
co-chairs, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking France and Saudi Arabia for convening this important conference. Our convening today takes place against the backdrop of the ongoing war in Gaza, raging for more than 20 months now. Nothing can be stronger, more pressing reminder of the need to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to take action towards peace and the two-state solution. The humanitarian situation in Gaza remains utterly unacceptable. Hostages, including 7 German citizens, are still in Hamas's captivity. The man-made hunger crisis afflicting civilians in Gaza is especially unsettling. All this will have irreversible consequences for generations. Germany, therefore, demands immediate, safe, rapid, unhindered, and sustained access by the UN and humanitarian organizations, an immediate ceasefire, and the unconditional release of hostages now. More than 600 trucks are waiting in Al-Arish at the Egyptian border alone, and Germany committed up to $350 million in humanitarian assistance since October 2023 to operations in the Palestinian territories. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany will always be unbreakably committed towards security of the State of Israel and its people. And it is our firm conviction that ultimately only the two-state solution with a Palestinian state existing side by side in peace and security will guarantee Israel's existence as a Jewish and democratic state. Or to put it in other words, all people in the region have to be able to live without fear and in dignity. After the horrendous terrorist attack of Hamas on the 7th October and the brutal war that followed since 20 months, one thing is clear. Managing the conflict is not longer an option. We finally need to solve it. The suffering of people has to end. We therefore appreciate that discussions on the day after in Gaza are a key part on this conference. As Germany, we suggest the following. First, Hamas must neither govern Gaza nor be a threat to Israel. For this reason, we stand ready to help providing security by concrete measures, including through EU missions such as UBAM, Rafah, and UPOL COPS, and support to the United States Security Coordinator for Israel and Palestinian Authority. We do this in cash and in kind. Second, we welcome the Arab plan for the day after. Any day after plan needs local Palestinian and Arab ownership. Gaza belongs to the Palestinians and must be rebuilt. Third, we state loud and clear that the Palestinian Authority, as sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, must play the key role in the future governance arrangement. For this reason, let me confirm that Germany stands ready to play an important role in the reconstruction of Gaza and supports the international efforts of Egypt and other partners. We are considering to co-convene a reconstruction conference soon after the ceasefire is achieved. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our clear policy to protect the viability of the two-state solution. We push back against any attempt to weaken or destroy it, be it on the ground or in the political sphere. For this reason, 3 legal arguments in line with long-standing EU positions are key to our policy. First, we do not and will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon by the parties. Second, we consider Israeli settlements in the occupied territories unlawful and a serious obstacle to peace. Third, we respect the ICJ's advisory opinion of the 19th July 2024 and act in line with its stipulations. Ultimately, we want to see an independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side in peace and security with Israel. 2 remarks. This state needs to be built, not just declared. The building of this state has to be made possible, not impossible. For this reason, we contribute every single day in cash and in kind to building the foundations of the future Palestinian state. First, the total value of our ongoing bilateral development cooperation with the Palestinian Authority amounts to more than $1 billion in total. We work for better institutions, efficient Palestinian municipalities, and improved water services and infrastructure. Second, we strengthen the Palestinian economy through education, vocational training, and the work programs, and we call on Israel to release this tax revenue which belong to the Palestinian Authority under the provisions of the Paris Protocol. Third, we support civil society, peace building, dialogue, and shared society initiatives that pave the way for a better understanding of both societies. Joint narratives for peace are more important than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, even if it seems like a very remote perspective, while there is a war in Gaza and while there are very negative trends in the West Bank, a two-state solution must be negotiated by Israel and the Palestinians. As Germany, we have said to recognize a Palestinian state rather at the end of such negotiations. This is still our position, but we do see that Israeli policies are currently pointing in the opposite direction. This is utterly wrong and not serving Israel's long-term security interests. We therefore urge Israel to engage in the political process for a two-state solution, which is launched with the conference today. This is a way to achieve lasting peace and lasting security. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency, the Minister of State of Germany, and now give the floor to Her Excellency Minna-Lina Lindh, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Estonia.
Co-chairs and colleagues, let me add Estonia's voice to some very important statements already made during this conference. So as we are living in a world increasingly shaped by conflict, the international rules-based order with the UN Charter at its core is under a growing strain. One of the clearest and most painful examples in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Palestine, it stands as a symbol of our collective failure. Failure to prevent suffering, to mediate peace, to uphold international law, and to protect the innocent. We must ask ourselves, how can we, in the 21st century, allow this conflict to continue threatening both people? How many more generations must grow up amid rockets and rubble before we say, enough? There are no words enough to describe the devastation caused by escalation of violence since 7 October 2023. We must continue to strongly demand the protection of civilians, the release of hostages, distribution of life-saving aid at scale, and accountability for violations of international law. Estonia has consistently worked towards these aims and provided humanitarian assistance through international humanitarian organizations. Ending the devastation in Gaza is not only a political imperative, it is a moral one. To truly end the cycle of violence, we must address its underlying causes. The only comprehensive path forward is the two-state solution, a viable independent Palestine and a secure and recognized Israel. Two peoples living side by side in peace, dignity, and security. This path requires meaningful engagement, courage, and leadership from both Israelis and Palestinians. We need to insist on benefits of dialogue, empower responsible voices, and support those who will still believe that peace is possible. It also requires a committed international community. We need honest brokers who are guided by justice and long-term vision. We commend those countries and leaders who have undertaken that task and put in their effort throughout the years. We agree that it is high time to move beyond ideals towards practical implementation of the two-state solution. To this end, Estonia welcomes and supported the convening of this conference and is an active member of the Global Alliance for the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. There have been many valuable ideas on how to accelerate the implementation of the two-state solution, and we are ready to do our part. It has to start today. In order to materialize an independent Palestinian state, we need to strengthen the Palestinian Authority and Palestinian institutions. Estonia is a long-standing supporter of the Palestinian Authority. We have had cooperation in e-governance, helping to build digital services. We have advised Palestinian police through the EU mission and trained Palestinian diplomats at the Estonian Diplomatic School. We will continue to support the Palestinian Authority and its reform agenda. Estonia is also committed donor and partner to UNRWA and will contribute to discussions on the agency's future. The road ahead is difficult, but the alternative, continued violence and despair, is unacceptable. Let us recommit ourselves to peace as a necessity. Let us work to end this war as an act of global responsibility. And let us help bring Israelis and Palestinians together, not just because they deserve peace, but because the world needs it too. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs of Estonia, and I now give the floor to His Excellency Herbert Scheibner, Special Envoy of the Republic of Austria for the Two-State Solution Conference.
Excellencies, distinguished co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by expressing my appreciation to the co-chairs, France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for the convening of this very important high-level conference. Austria remains firmly committed to a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace in the Middle East, a peace in which two democratic states, Israel and Palestine, live side by side in peace and security within secure and international recognized borders. But we are not here to merely reaffirm long-held positions. We are here to support concrete progress for real steps toward the implementation of the two-state solution. Sadly, the already distant prospects for a lasting peace have moved even further out of reach ever since the horrendous terror attack by Hamas on 7th of October. And we should never forget this. As a first and crucial step towards resuming a credible peace process, the war in Gaza must end right now. To this end, Austria calls for an immediate ceasefire in line with UN Security Council's resolutions 2735, leading to a permanent end of hostilities. Hamas must unconditionally release all remaining hostages with dignity. Taking them was a crime, a terroristic act that should never have been committed. At the same time, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is nothing less than apocalyptic. Too many civilians, too many children have lost their lives in vain. The suffering of the civilian population must stop. Abiding by international humanitarian law is not optional. In an effort to alleviate the dire crisis, Austria has provided over 67 million euro in humanitarian aid to Gaza and the conflict-ridden region since hostilities began. We welcome the understanding reached between the European Union and Israel to significantly improve the distribution of aid and call for its full and swift implementation. Moreover, the United Nations and the ICRC must be fully involved in the distribution of aid. A mechanism that does not comply with the humanitarian principles and puts vulnerable people at risk defies its own purpose. The reported killing of over 1,000 Palestinians seeking aid is horrifying and unacceptable. Stabilizing both the security and humanitarian situations is a prerequisite for a second phase, the medium-term perspective. This second step is the reconstruction effort and economic support. For us, it's clear. Gaza is and will remain Palestinian. Any calls for displacement or annexation of Palestinian legal land are illegal and will not only lead to more chaos and violence in the region. But the most difficult question remains, how can a pragmatic and realistic governance arrangement be ensured for Gaza under the Palestinian Authority, in which Hamas plays no role and is fully disarmed, posing no threat to Israel? Austria welcomes the initiative of the Arab countries to present a plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. We will continue to support this plan and stand ready to contribute to its financing when the time comes for its implementation. Austria, also via the European Union, will continue to support the Palestinian Authority to help it address its most pressing needs, build international capacities, and implement its reform agenda. A strong Palestinian Authority is also in the interest of Israel. Therefore, we call on Israel to release the legitimate funds of the Palestinian Authority. Finally, on the long-term perspectives for a two-state solution. While this conference is of course an important contribution, a negotiated solution remains the only sustainable path that is in the interest of both parties. Austria therefore calls for the swift resumption of credible negotiations between the parties. Austria continues to support the Palestinian people's right to self-determination and the establishment of a democratic, viable, and continuous Palestinian state. In this regard, Austria will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed by the parties. Austria rejects any unilateral attempts to undermine the prospects for a two-state solution. The expansion of settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories is a clear violation of international law and an obstacle to peace. We demand that Israel holds all construction of additional settlements. The legitimate security concerns of Israel must represent a key consideration of any process leading to a two-state solution. All actors in the region must clearly reject any kind of terrorism. Excellencies, Austria's commitment to peace is unwavering. The international community has a clear role to play, to enable, to support, and to hold all parties accountable. You ever can count on Austria to continue to stand always on the side of peace. Thank you very much.
I thank the Special Envoy of the Republic of Austria for the Two-State Solution Conference. I now give the floor to His Excellency Arjus Ursuljiks, Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
Distinguished participants, ministers, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening this meeting at a critically important time. As a newly elected member of the United Nations Security Council, we are humbled by the responsibility we now share in upholding international peace and security. We approach this role guided by our own history of striving for sovereignty, dignity, and international recognition. Our experience is at the foundation of our belief that we can work together and make the two-state solution a reality. We have been striving for peace in the Middle East for several decades, and the current crisis, triggered by the brutal terror attacks of Hamas against Israel, is a testament to the necessity for a political horizon that can guarantee the security of both Israel and the Palestinians. More than 1,000 civilians killed in Israel during and after 7th of October of 2023, and almost 60,000 victims in Gaza are proof that the status quo is not sustainable. It is vital not to permit Hamas terrorists and other radical groups to hijack the Palestinian cause. Therefore, Latvia joins the international community in calling for immediate release of all hostages without preconditions, immediate return to the ceasefire, and ensuring supplying humanitarian aid at scale. Unfortunately, humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to spiral. Reports about civilian killings in Gaza while attempting to receive humanitarian assistance are deeply worrying and require immediate and independent investigation. Therefore, all efforts to expand humanitarian access to Gaza must be implemented swiftly and fully. The current crisis cements Latvia's firm belief that the only path to sustainable peace is through upholding international law, including international humanitarian law and the principles of UN Charter, in the Middle East and in other ongoing wars around the globe. We can build upon the Peace Day effort, expanding its focus beyond the day after to formulate concrete steps that will lead to the lasting solution. Meanwhile, it is essential to provide political and practical support for the legitimate Palestinian authorities, which the European Union, including Latvia, has strived to do for many decades. This should bolster the standing of Palestinian representation in potential peace talks and prepare the way for democratic elections in Palestine that should result in a government that has a strong mandate for negotiations towards a lasting, peaceful settlement. And in this regard, we welcome the intention of President Abbas to hold elections for a new Palestinian National Council before the end of the year. Latvia believes that the two-state solution must not be only a slogan. It must be a common goal for both sides and also for international community. Two-state solution also means recognizing Israel's right to exist as a state, and it is also a name that leads to mutual recognition and practical guarantees for both sides, because the alternative is further cycles of more destructive violence and radicalization. So let me take the opportunity to welcome the current conference once again as a crucial step towards building a roadmap that leads to the realization of the two-state solution. This should lead to direct negotiations guided by international law and relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, resulting in two states living side by side in peace and security. Thank you.
Je remercie I thank the Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Latvia. We have exhausted the time available for the general debate for this meeting. The general debate will continue this afternoon at 3 p.m. in this hall. The meeting is adjourned.